Hello everyone, welcome back to Storytime. My name is Jamie Phillips, also known as JP. I have to look at the screen to remember my lines. Hello again everyone, this is JP with Modern Gravity. Here's another episode of Storytime. So for those of you who don't know, basically floating is lying in a large tank of Epsom salt water that's skin neutral temperature for about an hour longer, and you come out feeling super relaxed because of things that does to your brain. That's the basics.
I love it.
Yeah. So today's video is all about one particular task we had to complete in order to get the business up and running back in 2016. A task that we've rewired the synapses in our brain to forget, because it was so horrific and painful. Such a cursed experience that both Matt and I have decided to take a blood oath to never talk about it in the vicinity of others. And no, we didn't actually take a blood oath, but we should consider it because I can feel the curly hairs on my chest standing upright at this very moment.
They're curly, for sure.
Today's story is all about the Scabbler. In the construction world, scabbling is a process used to remove a thin layer of concrete from the surface, and thus the machinery used to complete this process is called a scabbler. At this point you may be asking, why does this simple piece of equipment deliver such fear and terror to our souls? Well, let me answer that question by outlining the situation we were in at the time. The year is 2015, and our contractors had already completed most of the framing, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and interior drywall throughout the studio. It was crunch time, mainly because our construction plan was in shambles, and we had been figuring things out as we went along for the past several months. Situations like this happen when you have to fire your general contractor after a few weeks for legitimately not getting any work done. I think they call that UBLS, or unexpected bullshit life situation. I can tell that part too.
Did you just ad-lib that? Did you just add that in there?
No, I wrote that down.
You actually wrote that?
This is my writing skills. That's why I failed English. All horrific contractor rage aside, we had now approached the tank installation phase of construction, meaning that the float tanks were being delivered to the studio, and literally the following afternoon the tank installer was arriving from England to help install them. So the inanimate antagonists in today's story were the shower floors, I guess, and the Scabbler. We needed to remove the concrete from the shower area in order to correctly grade the floors, also known as water flowing down the drain instead of sitting on the floor. The float tanks arrived in the afternoon, so we spent most of the day unloading the 6 giant crates full of parts from the truck and hauling them into the store. Luckily, we had the help of friends, family, and pizza to get through the physical labor. Also on that note, thank you all very much again. By the time we finished unloading and organizing the crates, it was midnight. As they say, there's nothing like starting to do more physical labor after a day of doing physical labor. I'm sure somebody has said that
What?
once in life before. Yeah, they say that, trust me. I've heard them, haven't you heard them say that? They're over there saying it right now. I see them in the distance, so far away. Anyways, after a greasy slice of pizza, I looked at Matt and said something along the lines of, well, we should probably start doing these floors. Shouldn't take too long, probably just a few hours. Earlier that week, I had put an order in to rent some equipment that I later learned would give me night terrors after the experience of using them. Of this equipment was a beastly diesel-powered compressor, and of course, the dreaded 5-head Scabbler. Matt and I geared up, wearing full ear protection, respirators, and eye protection. Then we get the compressor set up in the parking lot at the front of the building and ran a long-ass 1-inch airline throughout the store. Feeling badass and energized, we were ready to rock and roll and scabble our little faces off. So we fired it up. And on that day, I personally experienced the most soul-piercing vibration, an eye-rattling noise that I'd ever been exposed to. I thought my butt would literally shake off my body, and I'd finally be crowned the twerk king of Alberta, but not yet.
But not yet. Not yet.
Why all the chaos, you may ask? Well, it's because a Scabbler is basically a machine that repeatedly punches the ground with abrasive metal fists until you tell it to stop. In our case, we had 5 of these large metal fists, Mike Tysoning the floor and laying waste to all the concrete in its path. Or at least that's what I thought would happen. When I rented the equipment, I read the unit would be able to remove 1/4 inch of concrete per pass. So of course, in my mind, I thought, a few passes per room? Hot diggity, we'll be done in no time. Problem was that neither Matt nor I realized or understood the true nature of the concrete we were working with. Especially when the concrete we were working with was steel reinforced and 59 years old. That's plenty of time to cure and make our lives a living nightmare. We make our first pass in room 1, pull the Scabbler back, the dust clears. We take a look at the floor and It had barely penetrated the surface of the concrete. It's now around 1 a.m., and we're both starting to understand how this new construction project was about to unfold. The Scabbler did work, but because the concrete is so hard, the expected quarter-inch layer of concrete per pass was more like an aggressive scratching of the concrete floor. But like all things during construction, it would pop up later to kick us in the face and ass. So we scabbled away. The machine vibrated and bounced around so violently that it took both of us to wrestle it into operation. One person to hold onto the handle and the other to guide it around the shower drain. It smashed so much concrete into dust that we quite literally couldn't see a foot in front of us, and we'd both disappear from each other's view the moment it started operating.
It was like what you would give the Hulk a massage with. It's like what this.
That's a good analogy. I'll go with that.
And the concrete being the Hulk.
If you're
Get affected.
If you're brave enough to give the Hulk a massage in the first place. We eventually finished the floor in room 1, then had a quick stretch followed by yelling a large capacity of expletives. Now that's
A large capacity.
city of expletives, yeah, right? And then got right back to the next room, and then the next room, and then the next room, and so on until all 6 rooms were done. Here's the only video we have of the experience, where it looks like we got into a fistfight with Pigpen from Charlie Brown.
No idea what time it is.
We were finally finished, and it was now 7 a.m. in the morning. Completely battered and worn down, we had succeeded in Mike Tyson fist punching the ground in the shower of the float rooms to ensure gravity would bow to our will. It only took 6.5 hours, so I guess my initial estimate was somewhat incorrect. Like I mentioned earlier, we were still working against a deadline. And with it being 7 in the morning, our Russian framing crew showed up ready to go. They walked in and looked at us like, damn. I was gonna do this in a Russian accent. They walked in and looked at us like, damn, you two look like you're smitten with pain and anguish. If you're Russian and you just heard that, I apologize. Like, don't attack me. Keep in mind, we also still had to pick up the tank installer in a few hours as well. We realized that after a full day of moving and organizing 6 massive float tanks and a night of hellish vibrational intensity, sounds so different than what it is.
That sounds extraordinarily.
That sounds really different. And in a full night of hellish vibrational intensity and noise, it was right back to construction 10 to 50 minutes later because, well, float centers don't build themselves. Oh, and there was work to be done. Forgot the other line. Knowing there was a full day of construction ahead of us again, Matt and I figured the best decision was for me to go home and get 2 to 3 hours of sleep. Then I would be good to questionably drive on the highway and pick up the tank installer later in the day. Matt would unfortunately stay at the store to destroy his forearms pumping green glue onto drywall for the next 6 to 8 hours. And if you think that's unfair, don't think that's unfair, because we both had days when one of us worked 24 to 36 hours plus, straight, doing physical labor, while the other caught up on sleep. It's just what had to happen to get the store up and running. So yeah, that's the story about why we never say the word Scabbler.
Except in this context.
Also, if you ever plan to do construction like this, consider using a jackhammer.
Or doing some research on how hard concrete can get.
Only use a Scabbler if you want a real challenge or if you want considerable aches and pains throughout your entire body. If you float with us, the next time your booty butt cheeks are naked and taking a shower in one of our float rooms, I hope you will recognize the simple things in life, like how water is wet, or the obscene amount of energy it took to make gravity move water into the drain. Hence the name, modern gravity. You thought it was about floating, but we're actually drainage enthusiasts. That's not true. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about floating, check us out online. Website is moderngravity.ca. It's in brackets here. I'm really not good at reading off a script. We need a teleprompter. YouTube or social media. If you want to try floating, feel free to give us a shout or email us. Calling us works. I said that twice. Or you can just hit up the website. You can go to the top right and then book your appointment online. That's all for today's episode of Storytime. And I mean, there's always more to tell. But that's another story for another time.
Yes.
Air 5. Wow. All right, now take the camera and throw it into the trash. Just, I write how I speak, which is frustrating because I realize how I speak.
How do you feel about yourself?
I feel awful. I feel like I should have paid more attention. Which is what I'm learning after.
But look at you
Yeah,
now.
look at me now!
I got my own TV show.
I only shave every 7 weeks. That's what we call true success. Yeah. Actually, in some of the recordings, I realized that I just have a patch of hair, like randomly on my face, and I'm like, that one's going online.